Forget the highways. The real horror show for a long-haul trucker begins when I leave the asphalt. My name is Jake Morrison, and I've been driving cross-country rigs for 17 years. I've logged over 2 million miles across 48 states, hauled everything from pharmaceuticals to furniture, and seen every kind of weather Mother Nature can throw at you. I know every truck stop between Seattle and Miami, every shortcut through the Rockies, every rest area where the coffee's still drinkable at 3 in the morning. But there are deliveries that the dispatch never mentions twice, the ones marked with red codes in the system, the ones that come with cash payments and handwritten addresses on crumpled paper, the ones that only happen after midnight, always off the main roads, always to places that don't show up on any GPS. I'm not supposed to talk about them. None of us are. There's an unspoken rule among the drivers who take these jobs. You do the run, you collect your money, and you keep your mouth shut. Because talking about it means remembering. And remembering means reliving those hours when every instinct in your body is screaming at you to turn that rig around and gun it back to civilization. But tonight, I'm breaking that silence. Maybe it's because I just got another call. Maybe it's because the nightmares are getting worse. Or maybe it's because I think someone needs to know what's really moving through this country after dark, on roads that most people don't even know exist. They started subtly. A dispatcher I'd never heard before, calling my personal cell at odd hours. "We have a special delivery opportunity for you, Mr. Morrison. Premium pay, all cash. Interested?" The first time I almost hung up, but the figure he quoted was 3 times my normal rate for half the distance. In this business, you don't turn down that kind of money without at least hearing the details. The details should have been my first warning. Drop-off coordinates instead of addresses. Midnight to 4 a.m. delivery windows only. No questions asked about the cargo. No signatures required. And the strangest part, which is a list of rules typed on a separate sheet of paper, handed to me in a sealed envelope with my payment. I laughed when I first read those rules. Thought it was some kind of joke. Maybe a prank the veteran drivers pull on guys who think they've seen it all. But I kept that paper, kept it folded in my wallet, because after that first delivery, after that first drive down an unmarked dirt road where my headlights seemed to die just a few feet ahead of the truck, where the darkness felt like it had weight and presence, I understood. Those rules weren't a joke. They were survival instructions. And tonight, I'm going to tell you why. Before the red code deliveries, my life had a rhythm, a predictable, almost meditative quality that most people wouldn't understand. There's something peaceful about the open road at dawn, watching the sunrise paint the interstate in shades of gold and pink. The hum of the engine becomes white noise. You learn every radio station's range, know which diners serve breakfast all day, which rest stops have the cleanest showers. I had my routes: Chicago to Denver, Atlanta to Dallas, sometimes up to Portland if the pay was right. I'd call my ex-wife every Sunday, video chat with my daughter before her bedtime. The job was lonely, sure, but it was honest work. Good work. The kind where you knew exactly what you were hauling, where it was going, and why. The other truckers became a kind of family. You'd see the same faces at the same stops, share coffee and complaints about dispatch, traffic, and the endless construction on I-70. We'd warn each other about speed traps and black ice. Simple stuff. Normal stuff. But there was always talk. Late-night conversations at truck stops when the coffee had gone cold and the parking lot lights flickered. Stories about drivers who took special jobs. Guys who disappear for days, come back with cash and thousand-yard stares. Nobody asked questions. Nobody wanted to know. Until the money got too good to ignore. The call came on a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were usually slow, and I was parked at a rest area outside Amarillo debating whether to take a 3-day break. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Mr. Morrison? The voice was professional, neutral. My name is irrelevant. I'm calling on behalf of a logistics company that handles specialized transport. Your name came highly recommended. Recommended by who? I asked. That's not important. What's important is whether you're interested in earning $5,000 for a single night's work, approximately 200 miles. Simple delivery. $5,000. I'd been driving for 3 weeks straight and hadn't cleared that much. What's the catch? No catch, just specific requirements. The delivery must occur between midnight and 4 a.m. You'll receive coordinates, not an address. The cargo is sealed. You don't open it, you don't ask about it. Cash payment, half up front, half on completion. Are you interested? Every instinct told me to say no. This was how people ended up on true crime podcasts. But I thought about my daughter's college fund, thought about the rent increase on my apartment, thought about how many miles I'd need to drive to earn that kind of money legitimately. I'm listening, I said. Excellent. There's a truck stop 40 miles north of your current location. Be there at 9 p.m. tonight. A man in a gray jacket will meet you. He'll have your payment and instructions. One more thing, Mr. Morrison. This opportunity is confidential, extremely confidential. Do you understand? Yeah, I understand. Good. We'll be in touch. The line went dead. I sat there for 20 minutes, watching the sun dip toward the horizon, telling myself I could still back out. But at 6 p.m. I started the engine and headed north. The man in the gray jacket was exactly where they said he'd be, standing beside a black sedan in the far corner of the parking lot. He didn't smile, didn't make small talk, just handed me an envelope, thick with cash, and a sealed manila folder. Your cargo is already loaded in Bay 7. Coordinates are in the folder, along with the rules. Rules? Read them, follow them exactly. These aren't suggestions, Mr. Morrison. They're survival instructions. He walked away before I could ask what that meant. Inside the truck, I opened the folder. A single sheet of coordinates, and below it, a typed list. The rules. Do not look in your rearview mirror after 2 a.m. If you hear knocking from inside the trailer, do not stop. Do not investigate. Increase your speed. If you encounter another vehicle on the access road, do not acknowledge it. Do not make eye contact with its occupants. Keep your radio off. Do not answer your phone during the delivery window. If you see someone standing in the road, do not swerve. Do not slow down. When you reach the drop point, leave the trailer. Do not wait for acknowledgement. Drive away immediately. Do not discuss this delivery with anyone. I read the list 3 times. Laughed nervously. This had to be some kind of joke, right? Veteran drivers hazing the guy who thought he was tough enough for the weird jobs. But the cash in my hand was real enough. At 11:45 p.m., I pulled out of that truck stop following coordinates that led me away from the interstate, onto state highways, then county roads, and finally onto an unmarked dirt path that my GPS refused to recognize. That's when I understood. Those rules weren't a joke at all. The transition from pavement to dirt happened so gradually I almost didn't notice. One moment I was on a narrow county road with faded yellow lines. The next, my tires were crunching over gravel, then packed earth. My GPS had gone dark 5 miles back. The screen frozen on a blank gray square that said, "No road available." The temperature dropped. Not gradually, suddenly, like I'd driven through an invisible wall. 1 second my cab was a comfortable 68 degrees. The next, my breath was fogging the windshield. I cranked the heat, but it didn't help. The cold felt wrong, invasive, like it was seeping through the metal itself. Fog rolled across the road in thick, lazy waves. My high beams should have cut through it, should have illuminated at least 50 yards ahead. Instead, the light died about 10 feet from my bumper, swallowed by a darkness that seemed almost solid. I'd driven through fog before, mountain passes in Oregon, coastal routes in Maine. But this was different. This fog moved against the wind, pooling in places it shouldn't, forming shapes that almost looked deliberate. The radio had been playing static since I left the interstate, not the normal white noise of being out of range, but rhythmic static, pulses, almost like breathing. I reached to turn it off, then remembered rule number 4. Keep your radio off. I'd already violated it by having it on in the first place. My hand hovered over the dial, then I switched it off. The silence that followed was worse. Time stopped making sense about 20 minutes into the dirt road. My dashboard clock said 12:47 a.m., but it felt like I'd been driving for hours. The road curved endlessly, never straight, for more than a few seconds, winding through forest so thick I couldn't see past the first line of trees. They pressed close to the road, branches reaching over like skeletal fingers trying to touch the trailer. That's when I started noticing the trees themselves. They were wrong. Pine trees shouldn't grow at those angles, shouldn't twist around themselves like that. And the bark, even in the limited light of my headlamps, looked too dark, almost black, with textures that seemed to writhe when I wasn't looking directly at them. Something darted across the road. Too fast to identify, too large to be a deer. I gripped the wheel tighter, remembered rule number 5. If you see someone standing in the road, do not swerve, do not slow down. But that hadn't been standing, that had been running. And it definitely hadn't been human. The knocking started at 1:15 a.m. 3 sharp raps against the inside of the trailer, metal on metal, deliberate, measured. I felt my stomach drop. Rule number 2, if you hear knocking from inside the trailer, do not stop. Do not investigate. Increase your speed. I pressed harder on the accelerator, but the dirt road limited how fast I could safely go. The knocking continued. 3 raps, pause, 3 raps, pause. Like something was trying to get my attention, testing to see if I'd respond. Not happening. I muttered, white-knuckling the steering wheel. Whatever you are, you're staying back there. The knocking changed. Now it was moving, traveling along the length of the trailer, from the back doors toward the cab. Methodical, getting closer. I could track its progress by sound alone. Each set of 3 knocks was a few feet nearer than the last. My speedometer read 45. On this road, in this fog, that was borderline suicidal. I pushed it to 50. The suspension groaned. The trailer swayed. But the knocking kept coming. Then it stopped. Right behind my cab. So close I could feel the vibration through the seat. The silence stretched for 10 seconds, 20, 30. 3 knocks on the back wall of my cab, inside the truck, between me and the trailer. I don't remember the next few minutes clearly, just white-knuckled terror and the certainty that something was about to reach through the wall and grab me. But nothing did. The knocking stopped. And when I finally glanced at the clock again, it was 2:03 a.m. Rule number 1. Do not look in your rearview mirror after 2 a.m. My eyes wanted to drift to that mirror, wanted to see if anything was behind me, beside me, following me. I forced myself to stare straight ahead, even covered the rear view with my free hand. Whatever was back there, I didn't want to know. The clearing appeared without warning. One moment, suffocating forest. The next, an open space maybe 100 yards across. A structure stood in the center, calling it a building felt generous, more like a shed or maybe a bunker. No windows, single metal door, no lights. A figure stood beside it. My headlights hit him full on, but somehow I couldn't make out any features. Just a dark shape, human-sized, perfectly still. He didn't raise a hand to shield his eyes from the high beams, didn't move at all, just stood there, waiting. I followed the protocol, backed the trailer up to the marked spot. Someone had spray-painted a yellow rectangle on the ground, put the rig in park, left the engine running. Every instinct screamed at me to look at that figure, to make eye contact, to try to understand what I was looking at. Rule number 3. Do not acknowledge it. Do not make eye contact. I climbed out of the cab, legs shaking, and released the trailer coupling. The whole time I felt eyes on me. Not normal observation. This was weight, pressure, something actively pressing against my consciousness. The air smelled wrong. Copper and ozone and something underneath that reminded me of rotting meat. The figure hadn't moved. Still standing there 20 feet away. Not breathing, not blinking, just existing. I got back in my cab, put the truck in gear, and drove. Didn't look back. Didn't check my mirrors. Just aimed for the gap in the trees where the road continued and gunned it. The clearing disappeared behind me like it had never existed. I was 3 miles down the road before I realized I was crying. 5 miles before my hands stopped shaking enough to hold the wheel properly. And somewhere around mile 7, I hit pavement again. And it felt like breaking the surface of water after being held under too long. The second envelope with the rest of my payment was tucked under my wiper blade. When I stopped at the first gas station I saw, I never saw who put it there. I should have stopped after that first delivery. Should have blocked the number, refused the calls, gone back to legitimate routes, where the worst thing you encounter is road rage and bad coffee. But the money kept me coming back. That, and something else I didn't want to admit. A sick fascination with what I'd experienced. A need to understand it. The second red code delivery came 3 weeks later. Different coordinates, same protocol. The cash was delivered the same way, the rules were identical. I told myself I was prepared this time. I knew what to expect. I was wrong. This run started differently. The road was paved longer, cutting through flat farmland rather than forest. I could see the horizon, could track the stars overhead. It felt almost normal. Then around 1:30 a.m., I noticed the headlights in my side mirror. Another truck, maybe a quarter mile back, same size rig as mine, running the same speed. On a normal highway, this wouldn't mean anything. But out here, on a nameless back road at this hour, I hadn't seen another vehicle since I left the main route. I adjusted my speed, slowed to 40. The truck behind me slowed. I accelerated to 60. It matched me perfectly, maintaining that exact distance, always there, always the same quarter mile back, like it was tethered to me. Rule number 3 floated through my mind. If you encounter another vehicle on the access road, do not acknowledge it. But it was acknowledging me, or mimicking me. Every turn I took, it followed. Every curve, every fork in the road where I had to choose a direction based on my coordinates, it made the same choices. I killed my headlights for just a second. Some stupid impulse to see if it would do the same. Darkness swallowed everything. When I flipped them back on, the truck was closer. Much closer. Maybe 50 yards now. I could make out its shape in the mirror, an old Peterbilt, similar to mine but older. No license plate, no company logos, and no driver. The cab was empty. I could see straight through the windshield, see the steering wheel turning on its own, adjusting for the curves. My heart hammered against my ribs. I pressed the accelerator harder, pushing 70 on a road that couldn't safely handle it. The phantom truck kept pace. Then others appeared. One in my passenger side mirror, slightly ahead, running parallel through an adjacent field. Another crested a hill in front of me, rolling backward down the road, matching my forward speed perfectly, so we stayed the same distance apart. A fourth emerged from a side road I hadn't even noticed, sliding into formation like a convoy from hell. They surrounded me. 4 trucks with no drivers, maintaining perfect spacing, moving with an intelligence that made my skin crawl. I was boxed in, trapped in a formation that shouldn't exist, guided toward my destination by vehicles that defied every law of physics and reason. We drove like that for 20 minutes. My hands ached from gripping the wheel. Sweat poured down my face despite the cold. The trucks never deviated, never broke formation. And worst of all, I started seeing movement in their cabs. Not drivers, shadows, dark shapes that writhed and twisted in the empty seats, pressed against the windows like they wanted out. When I reached the delivery point, they vanished. Not slowly, not one by one. All at once, between one blink and the next. I was suddenly alone on an empty road. 4 sets of tire tracks beside mine in the dirt, the only evidence they'd existed at all. The 3rd delivery almost broke me. The call came at 2 a.m., waking me from another nightmare about empty trucks and shadow drivers. The voice on the phone was the same neutral tone, but there was urgency now. Triple pay, Mr. Morrison, tonight. Can you be ready in 1 hour? Triple pay. $15,000. Enough to finally get out of this business, pay off debts, maybe even disappear for a while. What's different about this one? I asked. The cargo is sensitive, temperature controlled. You'll need to check the refrigeration unit every hour. The trailer has a small access door on the side. Just verify the temperature gauge, nothing more. That's it? That's it, but Mr. Morrison, under no circumstances should you open the main doors. And whatever you hear, it's just the refrigeration system. Mechanical sounds, nothing more. The trailer was already hooked up when I arrived at the depot. Unmarked white refrigeration unit humming quietly. The access door on the side was about 2 feet square, secured with a simple latch. Inside was a digital thermometer, 36 degrees Fahrenheit. Normal for refrigerated cargo. I started driving. The sounds began around midnight. Subtle at first, scraping. Metal on metal, but rhythmic, almost purposeful. I told myself it was the refrigeration compressor, some mechanical quirk. But mechanics don't have rhythm. They don't respond to changes in the road. At 1 a.m., I checked the temperature through the access door. Still 36 degrees. But when I opened that small door, the smell hit me. Not the clean cold of a working freezer. Something organic. Something rotting underneath the chemical odor. And in the darkness beyond the temperature gauge, I saw movement. The scraping got louder, more insistent. Now it was accompanied by a wet, sliding sound, like something heavy being dragged across the floor. I white-knuckled the steering wheel, tried to focus on the road. Rule number 2, if you hear knocking from inside the trailer, increase your speed. But this wasn't knocking. Did the rule still apply? At 2 a.m., something hit the access door from inside, hard enough to make it rattle. I almost swerved off the road. The hitting continued. Steady, powerful impacts that made the whole trailer shake. Whatever was in there knew exactly where that small door was. Knew I'd been opening it. At 3 a.m., I heard the voice, not words, not exactly, but sounds that almost formed words. Pressed through the metal, desperate and hungry. The cadence of speech without meaning, like a recording played backward. It knew I was there. It was trying to communicate, or maybe to lure me into opening those main doors. The temperature gauge had gone dark. The refrigeration unit had shut off, or been shut off. I didn't stop to check. I just drove faster, trying to outrun the sounds, the impacts, the almost words that made my teeth ache and my vision blur. When I finally reached the drop point, an abandoned warehouse this time, 3 figures waited. They moved quickly, efficiently, unhooking the trailer without a word. One of them met my eyes for just a second. In that moment, I saw pity and warning. "Don't come back," he whispered. "They're getting hungry." I didn't ask what they meant. I just took my payment and drove away, leaving that trailer and its cargo behind. But I still hear those sounds sometimes, late at night when I'm trying to sleep. That wet sliding. Those almost words. And I wonder what I was really transporting through the darkness. The 4th delivery should have killed me. Would have if I hadn't gotten lucky, or maybe unlucky. Maybe death would have been cleaner than what almost happened. Different dispatcher this time. The voice was wrong, synthesized, like a computer, trying to sound human and not quite managing it. The coordinates led deeper into the wilderness than ever before. My GPS died after the first 5 miles. My cell phone lost signal 10 miles in. I was completely isolated, following handwritten directions by flashlight at every fork in the road. The engine died at 2:47 a.m. Not sputtered, not coughed. Just stopped, like someone had reached in and turned off a switch. My headlights dimmed to nothing. The cab went silent except for my ragged breathing and the tick-tick-tick of cooling metal. I was in the middle of absolute nowhere, surrounded by forest so thick it blocked out the stars. I tried the ignition. Dead. Checked the battery connections, the fuel line. Everything looked fine. The truck simply refused to start, like it had decided this was far enough, like it knew something I didn't. That's when I heard the footsteps, crunching in the gravel, slow, measured, circling the truck, not trying to hide, letting me know it was there. I locked the doors, a laughable gesture, and sat frozen, listening to whatever it was walk around my vehicle. Around and around in perfect circles, patient and unhurried. Then it started testing the doors. Gentle at first. A hand on the handle, trying the lock. When that didn't work, the testing got more aggressive. Pulling, jerking. The whole truck rocked with the force. But I still couldn't see what was doing it. My windows had fogged completely despite the cold, covered in condensation that shouldn't have been possible. Something scraped a message in the fog on my driver's side window, from outside. Letters drawn slowly, deliberately, each one taking seconds. "Let me in!" I closed my eyes, pressed myself against the passenger seat, as far from that window as possible. The scraping continued. I can help the engine turned over, once, twice. On the third try it caught, roaring to life. I didn't question it. I slammed the truck into gear and punched the accelerator. The tires spun, caught, and I lurched forward into the darkness. In my peripheral vision, because I refused to look directly, I saw it, standing beside the road as I passed, tall enough that my cab barely reached its waist, arms too long, hanging past where knees should be, and its face. I didn't look at the face. If I had, I don't think I'd be here to tell this story. But I felt it watching me drive away, felt something like amusement radiating from it, like this had been a test, like next time I might not be allowed to leave. I never made it to the delivery point that night. Just drove until I hit pavement, then kept driving until sunrise. The dispatcher never called to complain. No one asked about the cargo. It was like that delivery had never been scheduled at all. But it had been. And something had been waiting for me out there in the dark. Somethings that knew my name, knew where I'd be. Something patient enough to wait for the right moment. And I knew with absolute certainty that I'd just been warned. I stopped sleeping after the fourth delivery. Not by choice. My body simply wouldn't allow it anymore. Every time I closed my eyes, I was back on those roads, back in the darkness with something circling my truck, scratching messages into the fog. I jolt awake with my heart racing, covered in sweat, convinced I could still hear that wet sliding sound from the refrigerated trailer. My apartment became a fortress. Every light stayed on, 24/7. I installed 3 extra deadbolts on my door, security cameras covering every angle. My neighbors complained about the brightness bleeding through my windows at 3 a.m., but I didn't care. Darkness had become the enemy. Shadow and silence meant danger. The hypervigilance followed me everywhere. At the grocery store, I'd check every aisle before entering, mapping exit routes instinctively. At truck stops, I'd park under the brightest lights, back my rig against a wall so nothing could approach from behind. Other drivers noticed, started avoiding me. The guy who used to share coffee and stories had become the paranoid loner who flinched at sudden movements. I tried talking to my ex-wife about it once. Tried to explain why I'd stopped the video calls with my daughter, why I couldn't risk her seeing me like this. "You look haunted," she said, "like you've seen something you can't unsee." She was right. I had, and it was eating me alive from the inside out. The worst part wasn't the fear, it was the doubt. In daylight, surrounded by normal people living normal lives, the deliveries felt like hallucinations, like maybe I'd had a mental breakdown and imagined the whole thing. But then night would fall, and my phone would ring with that neutral voice offering another job, and I'd know it was real. All of it was real. Part 5. The Aftermath and Pattern Recognition. English version A. Psychological toll. I stopped sleeping after the 4th delivery. Not by choice. My body simply wouldn't allow it anymore. Every time I closed my eyes, I was back on those roads. Back in the darkness with something circling my truck, scratching messages into the fog. I jolt awake with my heart racing, covered in sweat, convinced I could still hear that wet sliding sound from the refrigerated trailer. My apartment became a fortress. Every light stayed on, 24/7. I installed 3 extra deadbolts on my door, security cameras covering every angle. My neighbors complained about the brightness bleeding through my windows at 3 a.m., but I didn't care. Darkness had become the enemy. Shadow and silence meant danger. The hypervigilance followed me everywhere. At the grocery store, I'd check every aisle before entering, mapping exit routes instinctively. At truck stops, I'd park under the brightest lights, back my rig against a wall so nothing could approach from behind. Other drivers noticed, started avoiding me. The guy who used to share coffee and stories had become the paranoid loner who flinched at sudden movements. I tried talking to my ex-wife about it once. Tried to explain why I'd stopped the video calls with my daughter, why I couldn't risk her seeing me like this. "You look haunted," she said, "like you've seen something you can't unsee." She was right. I had. And it was eating me alive from the inside out. The worst part wasn't the fear, it was the doubt. In daylight, surrounded by normal people, living normal lives, the deliveries felt like hallucinations. Like maybe I'd had a mental breakdown and imagined the whole thing. But then night would fall and my phone would ring with that neutral voice offering another job. And I'd know it was real. All of it was real. Be connecting the dots. I started researching during those sleepless nights. Forums, message boards, anywhere truckers gathered online to share stories. I searched for phrases: red code delivery, midnight runs, special cargo. Most threads got deleted quickly, but I learned to screenshot everything to archive before moderators could scrub the evidence. The patterns emerged slowly. I wasn't alone. Dozens of drivers, maybe hundreds, had taken similar jobs. Same protocol, coordinates instead of addresses, cash payments, strict time windows. Same rules, or variations of them, and same consequences for those who broke them. One driver in Montana described the shadow convoy. Same formation. Same driverless trucks. He tried to photograph them. His phone had melted in his hand, the plastic fusing to his palm. Another trucker from Georgia talked about the living cargo. She'd opened the trailer doors against instructions. Spent 3 weeks in a psychiatric ward afterward, unable to explain what she'd seen without screaming. But it was a retired driver named Marcus who gave me the framework to understand it all. We met at a truck stop in Nevada, both of us drawn to the same paranoid corner booth, backs to the wall. He'd been running red code deliveries for 15 years before he finally escaped. "It's a network," he explained, voice low. "Not human, something old that uses our infrastructure. Roads we built on ancient paths. Trucks instead of wagons. But the same purpose, moving things between worlds, between realities. We're just mules, man. Disposable couriers for entities that exist in the spaces between." "Why us?" I asked. "Because we're already ghosts. We drive at night, live between places, exist outside normal society. We're perfect for crossing boundaries that normal people can't even perceive." He pulled out a worn map marked with red X's across the country. Every delivery point sits on a convergence. Places where the barrier is thin. They're building something, Jake. Or feeding something, and we're helping them do it. I looked at that map and felt my stomach drop, because I recognized those locations. I'd been to 4 of them, and there were dozens more, spreading like a network of veins across America. We weren't just truck drivers anymore. We were part of something vast and terrible. And the worst part was knowing that somewhere out there, my phone would ring again. The voice would offer obscene amounts of money. And despite everything I'd learned, despite the fear and the nightmares, part of me would be tempted to answer yes. Because once you've crossed over, once you've driven those roads and delivered that cargo, you can never fully come back. The darkness recognizes you, and it won't let you forget. You're probably wondering why I haven't quit, why I haven't thrown my phone in a river, changed my name, and disappeared into some quiet town where the worst thing that happens is a broken water main. I've asked myself that same question every single day since that fourth delivery. The money is part of it, I won't lie. One red code run pays more than a month of legitimate work. I've cleared my debts, started a college fund for my daughter that'll actually mean something. But that's not the real reason. The real reason is harder to admit. There's an addiction to it. Once you've driven through that darkness, once you've seen things that shouldn't exist, normal life feels like a lie. Everything else is gray and hollow. The supernatural terror is more real than paying bills or sitting in traffic. It's like being a war veteran who can't adjust to civilian life because nothing else carries the same weight. And then there's the other truth, the one that keeps me up at night even more than the memories. About 6 months ago, I tried to quit. I blocked the numbers, deleted the contacts, told myself I was done. 3 days later, I woke up with a message carved into my apartment wall. Not spray painted, not written. Carved into the drywall from the inside, letters pushed outward like something had written them from within the wall itself. We know where she lives. They didn't need to specify who she was. My daughter. 8 years old, living with her mother 3 states away. The message was clear. I was in this until they decided I wasn't. Quitting wasn't an option. Not after what I'd seen, what I'd carried, what I'd become complicit in. So I answer the phone when it rings. I take the jobs, and I follow the rules. Because the alternative is worse than any nightmare I've experienced on those dark roads. If you're a trucker and you get an offer like this, trust me, you'll know it when you hear it. Here's what I've learned. Maybe it'll keep you alive. Maybe it'll just delay the inevitable. First, the rules they give you aren't complete. They're the minimum. I've developed my own supplementary list. Never eat or drink during the delivery window. Your body should be empty, uninviting. Carry salt in your cab. Real salt, not processed. Sprinkle it on the floorboards. It doesn't stop them, but it slows them down. Keep something iron within reach, not steel, iron. They react to it. Second, know the warning signs before you even take the job. If the dispatcher's voice sounds too perfect, too neutral, like it's being generated rather than spoken, hang up. If the money offered is more than 5 times your normal rate, refuse it. If the pickup location is somewhere you've never heard of and can't find on any map, walk away. Third, never break the rules out of curiosity. Every driver I've met who violated the protocols just to see what would happen is either dead, institutionalized, or changed in ways that make them something less than human. The rules exist because someone before you broke them and barely survived to warn the rest of us. And finally, understand that if you take these jobs, you're marking yourself. Something on the other side knows your name now, knows your route. You'll start noticing things even on normal deliveries. Shadows that move wrong, mile markers that repeat, exits that appear on your GPS but don't exist when you try to take them. You've become visible to things that most people never see. Last week I got another call. The voice was different this time. Older, raspier, like it was struggling to maintain human form. The coordinates they gave me led further north than I've ever gone, into territory that's barely mapped, where logging roads peter out into wilderness. The cargo was different too, smaller. Just a single crate, maybe 3 feet on each side. But it was heavy. Forklift struggled to load it, and it was warm. I felt the heat radiating through the trailer wall when I did my pre-trip inspection. During the drive, the crate hummed. Not mechanical humming. Something organic, rhythmic, almost like breathing. And I swear on everything I have left, that halfway through the delivery, the humming turned into words. Not English, not any language I recognized, but I understood them anyway, felt their meaning bypass my ears and go straight into my brain. Thank you for bringing me home. Whatever was in that crate was alive, and it was grateful. That scared me more than anything else I'd encountered because gratitude implies intention, implies intelligence. I wasn't just transporting cargo anymore. I was helping something that could think, that could plan, that could remember my face. The drop-off was abandoned mine shaft so deep my headlights couldn't find the bottom. 3 figures in hazmat suits took the crate without a word and descended into the darkness on a cable system. I watched until they disappeared, until even the light from their headlamps was swallowed by the depths. As I drove away, my phone buzzed. New message. Excellent work. Your next delivery will be even more important. If you're a driver and someone offers you these jobs, you have a choice I no longer have. Walk away. The money isn't worth it. The experience isn't worth it. Your soul isn't worth it. But if you're like me, if you're desperate enough, broken enough, or just curious enough to take that first delivery, then God help you. Because once you start down this road, the only way out is through. And some of us never make it to the other side. There's a highway that runs through this country that most people never see. It exists in the spaces between the maps in the hours after midnight when the world feels thinner. It's built on paths older than America itself, roads that were here before the first Europeans arrived, before the first nations carved their trails through the wilderness. I've come to believe that these delivery routes aren't random. They follow ley lines, energy conduits, places where reality wears thin like old fabric. Every civilization has stories about these places. Ferry roads in Ireland, spirit paths in Japan, the straight tracks of England. We just paved over them and called them progress. The trucks are just the latest iteration. Before us it was wagons. Before that, pack animals. Before that, people carrying burdens on their backs through the darkness. The cargo changes, the methods evolve, but the purpose remains the same. Feeding what lives in the spaces between, maintaining the balance between their world and ours. Some nights, when I'm driving a normal route on a normal highway, I'll catch glimpses of that other road. It runs parallel to ours, visible only in peripheral vision, populated by vehicles that shouldn't exist. And I wonder how many other drivers see it too. How many of us are marked? How many know the truth about what we're really hauling across this country? The darkness isn't just out there on those remote roads. It's everywhere, just beneath the surface of normal life. We've built our civilization on top of something ancient and hungry, and we feed it every night without even knowing. I still don't know what was in most of the cargo I've transported. Don't know who or what those silent recipients were. Don't know why they need us specifically, why human drivers, why these elaborate protocols. Marcus had theories. Said we're the ritual that human consciousness is required to bridge the gap between dimensions. Said every delivery is a summoning, every route a spell drawn across the landscape. But he disappeared 6 months ago. His truck was found abandoned on a back road in Montana, engine still running, his coffee still warm. I've tried tracking down other drivers from the forums. Most have vanished. A few ended up in psychiatric facilities, muttering about shadow convoys and living cargo. One sent me a message before he disappeared. They're not using us to transport things into our world. They're preparing us to go into theirs. I don't know what that means. I'm not sure I want to. My phone is ringing right now. Unknown number. I know what it is, what they want. The coordinates they'll give me. Tonight's delivery awaits. The keys are in my hand. The engine is already running outside. I can feel the weight of the darkness pressing against my windows. Patient and eternal. Part of me wants to refuse, wants to throw the phone away and run. But I've seen what happens to runners, and I've seen the carved message on my wall. So I'll answer, I'll take the job. I'll follow those coordinates into the spaces between, carrying cargo I'll never understand, to recipients that barely qualify as real. Because that's what I am now. Not a truck driver, a ferryman. Crossing the river between worlds, over and over, until the day I don't come back. The phone keeps ringing. I should answer it.